analysis, and then we'll go into the main meat of the presentation, which is the 3 P's of navigating the animation field, and we'll wrap up this entire talk. So we've already done a overview of who I am. My name is Treasure Ife. I've been working in the animation field in a professional capacity since 2019, and I currently serve as the creative lead at Cobox, which is a solar freezer organization. Yeah, but this is not about me. This is about giving value to you guys. And so first of all, what is animation? So animation is, simply put, the art of making things move autonomously. Now, I use the word autonomously because you could have animation in the sense that you could make things move, but if they don't seem to move autonomously, if they don't feel like they are moving on their own, it's not really referred to as animation. So for example, if you look at this demo over here on my screen, you could see that on this left-hand side, it won't be regarded as animation because you can clearly see I'm using my cursor to move it. But on the right-hand side here, you can see this square moving around. So this square moving around on its own over here on the right-hand side will be seen as animation. Meanwhile, the one that looks like I'm moving it with my mouse cursor will not be animation. So animation is creating the illusion of motion in an object, so making it look like it's moving on its own. So, however, how do you create the illusion of motion? So this is where we're going to a more technical definition of animation. So the illusion of movement is created by displaying a sequence of images at a speed of 24 frames per second. This is how every single video that you've ever seen every video that you've ever seen is made. How movies, films, Instagram videos, content, that's how every single one of them is made. They are actually just a series of pictures. And to illustrate this, let me just switch very quickly to another demo over here. So to illustrate this, if you remember all of these flipbook animations that were quite popular back in the day, I remember there was a time when we were younger that this was like the craze. So you can see that this person draws a picture or makes a drawing in each page, and then as he flips the page along, it sees that this drawing seems to appear to be moving. So this is how animation is created. So in animation, there are basically two major forms of animation. There is 2D and there is 3D. So what exactly is 2D and 3D? And I would say that the foundation of all of this, you actually already know it because it is rooted in mathematics, secondary school mathematics, specifically graphs. So if you remember your graphs in mathematics secondary school, you would remember that we have the x-axis and the y-axis. So the x-axis, so a graph with that x and y-axis, that is called a 2D graph. Why is it called a 2D graph? Because it has just two directions of movement, which is the x-axis and the y-axis. So an object that is in a 2D space can only move in those two directions. So it can only move left and right or up and down. It can also maybe move diagonally, but is diagonally just means it's moving, on the x and the y-axis simultaneously. Now, while these objects can move up and down, left and right, it can only move towards us and, away from us. So this is where we introduce a third axis, which is the z-axis. So that z-axis means that the object now has 3 directions of movement. So it can move up and down, left and right, and also forward and backwards towards us and away from us. So this process of this space whereby an object can move in all 3 directions is called a 3D space. But a space where an object can only move in those 2 directions is called a 2D space. So this is why we have 2D animation, which is a type of animation that is constrained to just 2D space, and 3D animation takes place in a 3D space. So simply put, that is 2D and 3D. So in 2D animation, we have different categories of animation. We have frame by frame. Frame by frame animation means just like the flipbook video that I shared earlier, whereby you have a drawing and you make a new drawing every single frame, and you can play those drawings, and then the drawings appear to be moving. But what if you don't want to draw every single frame? This is where we have something called cutout animation. So you have just a single drawing. So you draw things like the face, the hands, the legs, And then instead of making a new drawing for every single frame or in the animation, all you just need to do is just to manipulate those drawings you've already made. So you are not drawing a new thing, you are just manipulating what's already there. So that's cutout animation. And then finally, we also have motion graphics, which is not necessarily animation of characters like you would see in something like frame by frame or cutout animation, but mostly animation of shapes and objects, mostly shapes. So that is 2D animation categories. But again, it's far more complex than that. But don't be worried, this is just the classification of them. So there are many other fields that exist within each and every one of these categorizations. However, in the 3D field, there is less of a strict category. And the reason for that is because 3D kind of like has a pipeline or a process. And most of these processes kind of like feed into each other. So, for example, we have modeling. If you want to create 3D animation, first of all, you need to have an object that you can animate in the first place. So that object that you are, and so the process of creating that object to be animated is called modeling. Then we have shaders or texturing. This is where you give that object a color or you give it a material. So for example, you want to make an object like glass look like glass, you want to make it transparent, you want to make it see-through. The process of making that object have the physical qualities, the physical look of what you are trying to create. That is the texturing or shading process. Then obviously before you can begin animating, you need to put things like control points into this object so that you can manipulate those control points to animate. That is called rigging. And then we also have the animation process, which is the art of making this object now move. And then we also have rendering. Rendering is when your object, your 3D object just exists in the 3D software. So the process of taking it from that 3D software to export it as a video that you can watch with your friends, that you can upload to Instagram, Facebook, whatever, that is rendering. Then we also have compositing, simulations. There are many fields in 3D. This is just like the tip of it. And I know it looks very complex, but in actual practice, when you start learning it, it's a lot less complicated than it seems. It actually flows more naturally. And some general purpose softwares for 3D, we have Blender, which is free. Free software. General purpose, we have Maya. If you want to go into character animations, I want to animate people moving, Maya is awesome. You also have Cinema 4D. If you are doing 3D motion graphics especially, that Cinema 4D excels in that. And yeah, those are the many fields in animation. And one more thing that you need to understand, one thing that is quite I would say consistent in both 2D and in both the 2D field and the 3D fields is that you need both a technical skill. When you are learning, you are going to develop both a technical skill, which is knowing exactly where to click to get your results, and you're also going to develop an artistic skill, which is the way of the creative execution of knowledge to create beautiful results. Because you can know where to click, you can know exactly what to click, but your final results might not look good, might not look pretty, especially as a beginner when you just start learning. So it's a process before you get that eye for what looks good and you create things that look really good or have beauty in them. But we'll expatiate on this as we go further. However, this talk is not a technical talk. So the truth is that if you really want to learn animation, whether it's 2D or 3D, you can learn it online, honestly. You can learn it on YouTube. And besides, with the time we have, we can't really explore any of these fields in much depth. So I'm just going to touch on more of general advice on how to make sure that your journey through the animation field is more efficient and you're able to achieve more as you go through the animation field. So I've broken down, this is the meat of the presentation. I've broken down your journey through the animation field and the things that you need to grow into three sections. I'll call them the 3 P's of navigating the animation field. First, we have proficiency, which is how to learn and grow your skills effectively and efficiently. We have growing your persona, which is more like how do you grow your presence, your social presence in the animation community? How do you interact with the animation community? And finally, we'll talk about profit, which is some earning strategies for beginners. Again, I have to preface that a lot of the ideas I'm going to share here are mostly for beginners because depending on where you're on your journey, there are certain things, what you are going to require to grow in each and every one of these fields will be different. So what a beginner would do to grow will be different from what a professional will do to grow. So let's start with proficiency. So how do you learn and how do you grow your skills in the animation field, specifically in our current day world where there is information overload? So first of all, you need to know where you are. So they are basically, I'll kind of divided this into like 3 stages. So first we have a layman, and each and every one of these stages, they have their own different problems. They have their different priorities. They have the different things that is worrying them. So a layman you've probably heard of animation, but you don't know anything about animation. You don't know how to utilize any of the software. You don't know anything. What that person is going to do is going to be different from what a beginner is going to do. So a beginner, you know your software, you probably are familiar with the UI, but you are not sure, where do I click to get this result? I want to make a table, I want to make a share, I want to make this ball to move in animation. How exactly do I make it move? You don't know where to click, so that might be the problem of a beginner. Whereas a professional doesn't need to know where to click. He already knows where to click. Instead, his process will be, okay, fine, how do I speed up my workflow? This process that usually takes me 10 steps to do, how can I simplify it into 1 step? Is there another way I can optimize it? So a professional's focus is mostly, how do I get more quality in less time? How do I get more work done in less time? But a beginner, you don't even know the process, so you cannot say that I want to speed up my workflow. What are you speeding up when you don't know what you are doing? So depending on where you are, your priorities will be different, and how you grow your proficiency will be different. So first way of building proficiency is learning only what you need. Now, if you're a beginner and you are starting out, you've opened your software, there's a tendency for you to mostly just get knowledge for knowledge's sake. But if you have a goal in mind or something you want to create, my biggest advice is to learn exactly what is necessary for that. However, we still need to, emphasize that depending on where you are in this journey, this advice kind of applies differently. So if you don't have a goal in mind, before you can learn only what you need to actually have a goal of what you want to make, and then you find tutorials or resources that lead you in the direction of what you want to make. So if you are a layman and you don't even know what animation is about, 3D or 2D, and you don't even know what opportunities are there, you don't know what is possible, you don't even have a goal, then actually I would advise you do the opposite, which is to saturate yourself with as much information as possible about the field. So I would take an example of this is if you want to get a mobile phone, if you are buying a phone, or in my case, I'm a techie person, so if I want to buy something like a laptop, you would see that, like, for example, if I want to buy a laptop, I would get reviews about the laptop, testimonials, and all of that. If you want to get a phone, you get reviews about the phone, testimonials about the phone, content about the phone. So likewise, if you want to go into not just animation, any field in general, you want to saturate yourself with as much content about the field as possible. Now, I have to be specific, not tutorials. Your content should be edutainment, not tutorials. So when I mean edutainment, I mean entertainment content about that industry. So things, again, like I said, reviews, testimonials, which software is better, Blender or Maya, which software is the best for animation, general purpose lessons, not tutorials. Because if you just go straight to tutorials when you don't even know what the field has to offer, you might get bored very quickly. However, there is a point during your information consumption journey, there is a point you will get to whereby you realize that this thing is becoming too complex. And once you get there, what a lot of people forget is that they mistake it that anytime they are feeling that it's becoming complex, they mistake it that this means that I'm not good for the role, for the industry. But actually speaking, when you get to that point, what is actually telling you is that it's time that your information consumption period is done. Like, you've consumed enough information, it's time for you to practice. So once you've consumed enough information, once you start getting to the point where you're feeling like this information is becoming too much, or maybe you are just overexcited and you are willing to try, then it is time for you to get a tutorial. So what I recommend is you start a beginner tutorial as a layman, and the goal of your beginner tutorial is to learn the UI of the software. By the UI, I mean learn how to navigate the software, what buttons does which, and by following that tutorial, it will give you an idea. From there, you have ideas of what you want to make. And if by the time you are in this phase of your journey whereby you figured out some ideas of what you want to make and you now have a goal of what you want, then you can proceed to personally, I would advise that you finish that tutorial, but I know that there are many of us that don't have the patience to finish tutorial, especially once you have a goal. So in that case, I would recommend you now move your focus from just learning that UI to now find tutorials that teach you only exactly what you want. So if maybe, for example, what you want to learn is how to make a house, because I remember there was a time I was teaching someone 3D animation, and at a certain point, at the first time, he was excited, but after a while, I noticed that his interest just dropped. And then I asked him, like, okay, fine, what do you actually want to make? And I was like, I want to make a house. And immediately, we restructured the training into how you can make a house in 3D, because before, I was just trying to throw random things at him. But then his interest had come down. But then once we were now focused on what he wanted to make, all of a sudden, the interest came back. So as a beginner, follow tutorials that teach you exactly what you need, and don't try to accumulate tutorials for learning's sake. Don't learn for learning's sake. That's a quick way for you to get overwhelmed, especially in the world of a lot of information overload in our current world. And then once you follow the tutorial and you get something, create a personal project based on the technique you've learned in that tutorial. The next way to build your proficiency is to create as many projects as possible. Now, again, depending on your journey, your stage of journey, how you grow is actually different. So for a layman, for example, who doesn't know anything about animation, the way that person will grow will be based on knowledge. So the more knowledge a layman acquires, the more the layman grows. However, once you become a beginner, which means you are now a practitioner in the software, you are no longer a layman, your growth will not be based on more information. Your growth will now be based on more projects. So it's going to be the more projects you do, the faster you grow as a beginner. While if you are a professional, your growth is not necessarily based on projects. Now your growth will be based on creating systems and workflows. So this is why you see a lot of professionals, they don't even use the regular version of the software that a beginner would use. Some professionals go as far as to modify the software itself. They go into the code and they modify it, they program new things on top of the software just to help to support their workflow and make their workflow faster. So a professional's level of growth is based on creating new systems or optimizing his workflow. So that is how a professional grows. But you as a beginner, your growth is based on projects. A professional, on the other hand, his growth is based on, oh, these are 10 steps. How can I turn all these 10 instead of going through these 10 steps or clicking these 10, 20 buttons? How can I make it such that this entire thing is done in one button? So that is what a professional will do. He will now modify the software to create that one button. But as a beginner, you don't even know those 10 steps. So you create a project based on step 1, create a project based on step 2, create a project out of step 3, and that's how you grow as a beginner. So definite, but however, when you are a beginner and you are choosing projects or you are making projects, there is a smart way to go about it. So first of all, when you are deciding a project, one, you have to decide a type. So I'm going to elaborate on this in the next slide. But second of all, which is very important, you must have a deadline. So the biggest problem, one big problem that we often make as beginners is you end up working on things indefinitely as a beginner. And again, since your growth as a beginner is tied to the number of projects you make, not necessarily the density of that project. It's not how long you spend, but it's not about quality. Unfortunately, as a beginner, it's not about quality. It's about quantity. So if you spend too long on a project, you won't really grow well as a beginner. So as a beginner, what you should do is define a deadline first, and then come up with an idea that you think you can be made in that deadline. So you said, okay, fine, I want to make an animation in 1 week. And then you're like, okay, then you now work backwards from that. Like, okay, fine, what can I actually make in that 1 week? What kind of animation can I make in that 1 week? So you start with the deadline first, and then you work backwards to come up with an idea for the project second. Don't start with the project first and then a deadline second. No, a deadline first and then a project second. So next thing is, what are the project types that a beginner will mostly engage with? So number one is tutorial projects. Obviously, follow a tutorial, follow it to the end. So Tutorial usually has a deadline attached to it, because once Tutorial ends, the project ends. So it's kind of like has a deadline. Then the next kind of projects is your personal projects, and I've broken this down into like 3 other types of projects under this personal projects. So first one is original projects, which is like a project based on your own personal, based on your own personal ideas, or maybe you saw something and you were inspired, or you saw like different things and you want to like combine like 2 or 3 ideas you saw online together. You can get that. That's an original project. Even ChatGPT too, you can ask ChatGPT to give you project ideas as well. That's a good way of using AI. So yeah, original projects are there. Another one is remake. So sometimes as a beginner, you might see a project that you like and you're like, I would like to create that. So you can challenge yourself to make that project that you like. So recreate that project. So saying a project you like and recreating it is a remake. And another one that is less talked about is redos. So one thing that you will discover as a beginner once you've gotten into the animation field is you start seeing mistakes or things that a layman will not see. You see errors that laymen don't notice. And you'll be like, this thing that this person did, I think I can do it a little bit better. If he did this, maybe he would have done this, the animation would have been better. Maybe he would have done this, the animation would be better. When you see something like that, you can decide to recreate your own version of that project and correct the things you disliked about what that person did. So that is another type of personal project that you can make. And then finally is commercial projects. Although to be honest, as a beginner, you see these commercial projects, it will be tight one kind for you to get commercial projects. But when we get to the profit side, we'll talk about that. And next step in growing your proficiency is to share your work. Trust me, you need to document. Don't be shy about the work. Always share your work. One of my biggest regrets as a 3D artist is, a lot of my work before, 2019, I think before 2018 is kind of like lost to time because I was never posting them online. I was never sharing them. If only, and I mean, Facebook was there. I was active on Facebook, but I was not sharing my projects. And now when I want to like look at my journey, most of the earliest work I would find, they look a little bit polished because at that point I have already practiced for a very long time, but there was no evidence of the first tiny works that I was doing back then. So it's as if a particular section of my life is like, of my professional life is kind of like in a black hole or something. So as a beginner, you need to share your work. And apart from that too, apart from just living in the nostalgia and tracking your progress, seeing how far you've come up, because by the way, when you are feeling discouraged, because it's going to come a lot of time when you feel discouraged and you feel frustrated in your work, seeing your past projects is going to be part of the things that will excite you or just give you a little bit of hope that, okay, you're actually moving forward. And then another thing again that it does is that once you post a work, it gives you sort of like a dopamine rush to try and, do the next thing. So you post this work you are doing, you're like, ooh, this thing is cool. What's the next thing I can do? You are gingered to like go for the next thing. So share your work. And then finally, please be patient and be kind to yourself. Rome was not built in a day, and neither is proficiency. A lot of times as beginners, we are comparing ourselves with the professionals out there. Remember when I told you, when I shared earlier in this talk about the technical skill and the artistic skill. So as a beginner, most of the skills that you usually get at the start is the technical skill, knowing where and where to click. But having that sense or that creative sense of creating a work that looks beautiful, because a lot of the time you will know where to click, but somehow the work you're making is not as pretty as the work of a more professional person. So that artistic skill is something that is developed over time. So as a beginner, please be patient with yourself while you are learning the process. Don't beat yourself up too much. Know that it is a journey. Those ones you are comparing yourself with, they have gone through a longer journey. They've probably spent a longer time. They've been exposed to they probably have better resources. They probably have a stronger system. I mean, come on, don't beat yourself up. Do what you can with what you have and proceed from there. And a bonus tip is to journal. Now, the reason I made this bonus is because I know a lot of people don't like writing. I'm sorry, it's just fact, but it will help you. If you do pursue it, it will help you. So if you are journaling, you, instead of, your journal doesn't have to be writing your entire day. Today, day one of my journal, today I met this lady and I met, no, it's not necessary. The major things you should focus on your journal will be just 2 entries, which is 1, what I did today, Or if you learn something new, what I learned today. If you didn't learn something new, just what I did today. And 2, what I'm looking forward to trying next. What I'm looking forward to doing next. Or if it's in terms of learning, if you know what to learn next, because sometimes you don't know what to learn next, just what I'm looking forward to trying next. But if you have something in mind that I want to learn next, you say, okay, fine, what I'm looking forward to learning next. And you just write that on your journal. And if you do that, it's a way of keeping track of your journey as is a way of building your proficiency as a animator and in any professional field in general. So in summary, to build your proficiency, pick and learn only what you need, create as many projects as possible, share your work, don't keep your work in a vacuum and think you're improving. No, share your work. And one more thing about sharing your work, you don't just share it with the internet. If you have friends as well that are also learning as well with you, share with your friends. If you have a mentor that is training you, share with your mentor so they can critique you, give you feedback. So share your work, don't work in a vacuum. Fourth, be patient with yourself, and finally, journal as well to build your proficiency. All right, so next step, the next stage in your navigating the 3D field is your persona. How do you build your social presence in the animation field? So first of all, remember that social media is social. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of beginner creatives, I think in the creative field in general, that we make is that we don't interact with people on social media and we just post our work there and expect that likes will come. But if you don't interact with others, who is going to interact with you? Especially in the modern day social media algorithms that is very brutal. So if you are, if you want to grow your social presence in the animation field, if you want to create a branding, a brand or whatever, don't just post your work and go. Interact with people. Now, there are 3 major people you are going to meet in the animation field, in the animation world, in the social world of animation. So the people you are going to meet are those ahead of you, those on your level, and those behind you. Now, in my experience as a, even as a beginner as well, I can relate to this as a beginner. What the mistake that a lot of beginners make is we only focus on those that are ahead of us. We only focus on them. So you will see that when you are posting on social media, or maybe you are sharing sharing stuff on social media, we only share the works of those that are ahead of us. We completely neglect those that are on our level, and these other 2 sections, those are on our level and those are also behind us. Meanwhile, if you really want to supercharge your growth, especially in the social world, you have to prioritize those on your level, because those that are ahead of you, they might not have your time. And even if you have access to them, you can't really interact with the same level of intimacy as those who are on the same level as you. So make sure that you remember those on your level. So I can't really go into details of how exact, because there are exact specific ways of interacting with each and every one of these people on their level, on these different levels, but because of time we can't go in there. But the main point I want you to get from this is that make sure that in your animation journey, you interact with fellow beginners as yourself. Share their works on if you're on Instagram or Facebook, share their works on your stories, tag them on your works, drop comments on their page, drop fire. If you don't know what to comment, just drop fire emoji and love emoji and thumbs up emoji. That one is good. Irish. So use those means as a way of interacting with those on your level. And one more thing that we don't realize is that everybody's journey, people move at different speeds in life, so nobody is ever static. So these beginners that are here on this level, you don't know where they are going to be tomorrow. They are the top dogs. The people that are ahead of you, they were once beginners like you, and when we look at them that they are in cliques and we complain sometimes that these guys are snobbish, it's because you were not there when they were beginners. When they were beginners, we were together. So of course, when they become big dogs in the industry, they are not going to be open to other people. They are going to treat those that are in their circle with more intimacy. So for example, there is a friend of mine that he has currently gone really far in his field, and he at the level whereby he's working with the likes of Microsoft, Xbox. So that level is a very high level. Now, while I haven't gotten there yet, because we were interacting when we were still at the lower level, I still have a level of personal access to him that other people don't have that access. I have that personal access to him. So that is the power of interacting with those on your level. And then those who are behind you as well, don't snub them, don't completely shun them out. I know that some of them can be annoying. I mean, just like the way you yourself, you're annoying sometimes to some of those ahead of you. So some of them can pester you with questions. So if you can offer help, offer help. If you cannot offer help, I think one thing that you can do is if you had a problem, if you went through a problem and you had difficulty in finding resources, one thing you can do is to share the solution to that problem online. So you can share it on Reddit. You can share it in, for example, there was a period in time where I was learning game development, and there was problems whereby you would follow the code exactly as it is in the tutorial and your code will not work. So I had to go and learn from other tutorials and different other means in order to get the knowledge required for me to be able to solve the problem in that video. But what I did was that I would share the solutions I found in the comment section, and even till today I still get notifications from that comment of somebody else that is following that tutorial and they are stuck and they see the solution that I posted. So you can still help those who are behind you. So second way to grow your social presence is to collaborate. No man is an island. However, what I don't hear being talked about a lot is that there are different types of collaboration. So the most popular one we know is direct collaboration. So having people actively work with you on a project. So for example, you want to create a 2D animation. You have friend 1 will create the backgrounds, friend 2 will create the character, friend 3 does the animation, friend 4 does the coloring. So all 4 of you now all of a sudden are collaborating on a single project. So that is a form of collaboration. However, as a beginner, let us be honest, it's going to be tough for you to actually find people that would want to work together with you on a project. It can be tough. So this is where the second type of collaboration comes in, which is indirect collaboration. So for example, let's say you're having a conversation with one of your animation friends, and he might just say something like, I was having this problem in my animation and I figured out this was it, and I got a solution I watched this tutorial, I got a solution, and this was how I executed it. And you listen to that comment, it might be a throwaway comment, and you're like, let me try that. And then you try that in your project and it works. So when you try that in your project and it works, when you are posting your project, instead of just saying, hey guys, look at the project I made, you will say, you will tell them, I was having a conversation with Art. You tag the person at so and so the other day, and he shared with me this tip that he used to create his projects or whatever. And then when you and then you just say, okay, then I tried it in my project and it worked and I love it. Shout out to Art, whatever the person's name is. What you don't know is that you have indirectly collaborated with them. So you have made them a collaborator on your project by crediting them on your project. So if you can't find people to directly collaborate with you, you can also collaborate indirectly. If maybe those people that are ahead of you, the top dogs, you follow a tutorial and they really helped you, you put it in your post that, hey, I watched a tutorial from so and so person at so and so person and it really helped me. Explain how it helps you. So these are ways of collaborating. And finally, another way is share your process. So as a beginner, the truth is that you are not really going to create a work that is, stellar in comparison to the top dogs in the animation field. But the thing that is most valuable for you as a beginner is your thought process. So don't just post your final work, post your thought process, post your process. Post if you had any challenges, share the challenges and how you overcame them. It is your thought process and your problem solving exploits that will become more valuable than the final work itself. And even when we are hiring people in my organization, in the creative part of my organization, one thing I always look for is not just their final work, it's their thought process. How do you think about the problem whenever you're trying to solve an issue? How do you come up with solutions? What are the solutions you come? How do you navigate it? How do you bypass it? For example, there was a time that I was making a 3D animation, and the time frame we had to create it was very, very short. And the motion that the person had to make was very complex. And I did not have time to hand animate those motions. So what I did was that I went online. There is a tool whereby you can video yourself moving. It's called motion capture. So you video yourself acting out the motion you want to animate, and then the software online will convert it into an animation that you can use in your project. So I did that, but as it turns out, that software had a problem with the legs. Like the legs were messed up. The top body, I could fix it, it was okay, but the legs were a lost cause and time was going. We couldn't like sort out those legs. So what I did was that in the 3D space, the only part that you can export as a video is whatever is visible in the camera. Just like if you are in real life and you are videoing and you are making a film, it is the part that you show in your camera that is going to become your movie. So what I did was that I made sure that in the final video, the camera only viewed the person from the waist up. The camera did not catch them, did not show their legs. So that's way the client did not even know that we went through all of that. The client was like, oh, this is beautiful. To them, they think it's a cinematic shot. To me, I know that it is a walk around and I've been trying to dodge some kind of things. So problem solving is one of your currency as a beginner. So in summary, to build your persona, don't just post your work and go, socialize and interact with the community, both those ahead of you, not just those ahead of you, but also those on your level and those behind you. Collaborate. Don't just you don't need somebody to directly to have a direct input in your project for them to be considered a collaborator. They can collaborate indirectly, passively through a comment they made. Maybe they shared something on their stories, or they posted something that gave you an inspiration, or they shared something that gave you an idea. Crediting them is a form of collaboration. You can collaborate directly or indirectly. And finally, don't just share your work, share your process, share your thinking, share your thought process, your problem solving, and that is a way of building your persona and building your brand as a beginner in the field. And finally, we're talking about profits. How do you earn as a beginner? Again, I have to make the quote as a beginner, because the way a beginner is going to earn and the way a professional, the way a beginner is going to start earning money and the way a professional earns money are fundamentally different. So again, all of the tips that I've been sharing are mostly geared towards beginners. As a professional, you don't really use some of this. So first of all, what is the difference between a beginner and a professional? So as a beginner, you have two major problems that are keeping you from being hired by clients. Two major problems. And the first one is you have little to no collection of past projects. So as a beginner, you don't have a portfolio. You don't have a collection of your past work. So clients can't, so there is no evidence of your proficiency. There's no evidence that you are good. Meanwhile, a professional has a bunch of past projects. So where I am right now, most of the time, I don't really need to stress too much about. A client can come to me and ask me that, are you sure you can do this? All I need to do is just refer them to my YouTube. Go and check my YouTube and find anything that you like that is related to what you want to make. A beginner cannot do that. So as a beginner, you have little to no past projects, so you don't have a proof of your efficiency. And as a result, clients don't trust that you can deliver. But professionals, because of the evidence they have, clients trust that they can deliver. However, it's not all bad. As a beginner, you have some unique strengths, which is, one, as a beginner, you are very flexible. And meanwhile, compared to a professional, so a professional has systems, they have strategies, they have processes. They can't make the same moves that you can make. So because every move costs them something. So a beginner, you have the ability to be flexible. You can change your process, you can change your workflow, you can strategize, you can optimize, you can do a lot of things that a professional will not be able to do, simply because a professional is too bogged. I mean, when you have projects lined up between now and January, in fact, some clients, the client projects are too much that you have to even refer them to somebody else. You have projects booked ahead of time. You don't have time to be researching or innovating and all of that. But a beginner, you have high amount of flexibility. And finally, as a beginner, you have the ability to take risk, because you don't have anything to lose. Whether you take the risk or you don't take the risk, whether you take the risk or you don't, because I'm going to share some very risky strategies here to earn money. So whether you take risk or you don't take the risk, in the end, you don't have anything that you're losing. You still don't have projects. You still don't have any money that you're making from the projects. Meanwhile, a professional cannot take the kind of risks a beginner would take, because they have a lot of things to lose. If you take certain risks on a project, if a professional can't really apply for all kinds of jobs, because if they apply for certain jobs, it will mean they are turning down another job, so they can't take certain risks. And sometimes if they take certain risks, it can affect their employees, because it can cost them money, it can cost them their time, it can affect their employees, because a lot of them hire people, so they need to make sure that a project succeeds. But as a beginner, you have nothing to lose, so leverage that strength. So number one way of building profitability as a beginner is to pitching for gigs. So this is a process of whereby you bid for a project along with other freelancers. So an example of this is sites like Upwork and Fiverr. Now, personally, I can vouch for Upwork because my first international job actually came from Upwork. And one more thing about Upwork is that you don't necessarily have to be the one that gets the job. So, for example, there are some people that are on Upwork. Their accounts on Upwork actually get a lot of traffic from clients because they are a highly rated account, they're a popular account, so they can refer work to you. So that is another way of getting jobs through Upwork. And Fiverr works as well, but I haven't really tried Fiverr, so I can't say it. So on the platforms like Upwork, the way jobs come in is that clients would post a sample of their post a job application, a job request that, hey, I'm looking to do this, I'm looking to do so and so. If you are interested in this job, please send your portfolio. You as a beginner, you don't have a portfolio, so why would you go and send your tutorial animation over there? You don't really have a portfolio, so you cannot send portfolio like normal freelancers. So a professional will send a portfolio because he does not have time, but you as a beginner, the strategy to pitch and strategy that I can vouch for has worked for me and bagged me some of my international jobs was to do a part of that project and then send that part of that project to the client as your pitch. So when you are sending pitch, you are not sending portfolio like others. You are sending a part of the project to tell them that you mean business. And in my case, I mean, I would say 90 or maybe 80 to 90% of the time, the client responds back and they might even work with you. I mean, because they see that you are serious. A professional will not do this because a professional's time is very valuable, so they cannot spend time doing a part of the project to send. But as a beginner, you have that flexibility. So doing a part of the project and sending that as your pitch is a way to get an edge in when you are bidding for projects as a beginner. So excuse me. So the next way of gaining profitability as a beginner is to give your clients a zero risk offer. So remember that thing that I talked about, one of the problems you have as a beginner is that your client does not trust you. So your client is not sure that you can deliver on the work. The first step, which I shared about pitching, is to remedy the fact that you don't have evidence of projects. If you don't have evidence of projects, you can do a part of the project and send as your pitch. That's by the side. So this part, we're talking about reducing the risks of working with you. So clients won't hire you because they are not sure that you can actually do the job. They feel like you are a risk for them to invest in or for them to pay their money to. So this process is, the way I do this is through pay on delivery. Now, the reason I didn't call this pay on delivery is because the point is not for you to do work first and client pay after. That's not the point. We're not Jumia. The point of this, the point of a pay on delivery system, especially as a beginner, is to reduce the amount of risk a client needs to have, so a client needs to endure in order to work with you. However, you have to be smart about this thing, working in pay on delivery. So again, it's a way of breaking the trust barrier. So you tell the client that, hey, I understand that I understand that you are not sure whether I'm the one that, whether I can deliver on this project. So tell you what, I'm going to build a trust. Let me build a trust bridge for us. So I'm going to work on the project first. I'm trusting that you are going to pay. And if you like it, if you like what I've done, you can pay for the project. And if you don't like it, there's no biggies. You are free to let it go. So in a way, as a freelancer, so as a beginner, you actually still gain from this, because even if the client does not pay, that work that you have done, you can add it to your portfolio as part of your backlog. So it's still a win-win in a way. However, like I said, you have to be smart, because again, it's quite risky, and you want to make sure you are doing this for a project you really, really want to do, or really want to jump on. So a way to minimize the risk is, instead of doing the entire project before they pay, do a small part of the project first, and then ask them that, okay, then ask them to pay a deposit. So not the entire money, like 50% of the money, and tell them, okay, fine, I'm going to do a small portion of the project first. If you like it and you like us to continue working on this project, then you will now pay a 50% deposit. And then when we're done with the final project, if you paid 50% deposit, when we're done with the final project, you can now pay the balance. So that is a way of you kind of getting a 3D job and reducing the risks of working with you. And fun fact, this is how I got my first ever animation job. I did a small portion of the project first. in order for me to, just prove to them that I'm the guy and they have no risks working with me. And after that, they paid their deposits and we began the project in full. And when we're done, they paid their balance. Now, a professional cannot do this because now I don't do that because who has time? Before you start, you pay deposit before you start working with me. But, as a beginner, you are flexible enough to do that. Another strategy that I don't really see being talked about a lot is teaching. So I know as a beginner, you might be like, what is there for me to teach? I don't know anything. I just started. How will I teach? But you need to understand that what you are doing, so long as you have started creating stuff in that animation software, what you are doing is actually magic to some people. So it might look trivial to you because, again, obviously you are looking at the professionals and obviously it's not as good as the professionals. But to a layman who knows nothing about animation, you are a wizard. You are doing magic. So sharing some of your experiences or teaching people, like for example, maybe you are home and one of your church members sees you and like, this thing you are doing is nice, so my child is coming home for the holidays, I don't want him to be playing video games. Instead of playing video games, why don't you come and teach him this animation thing or whatever thing that you are doing, at least so he can learn something. That is an opportunity for you to earn money. And actually, when I was doing graphic design, when I was still freelancing in graphic design back then, and one of the first amounts of money I made, like serious money I made, was through teaching. Somebody came to me and like, come and teach my boy this graphic design that you are doing, and they paid me 15K. Now, 15K might not seem like a lot, and by where I am now, it's not a lot. But back then, that was a time when I was struggling to get people to pay 1,000 naira for logo or 1,500 for logo. That was the time I was struggling to get that amount. So somebody just coming from the blue and pay me 15K to train their child and teach their child for 1 week. I was like crazy. So as a beginner, you have opportunities of earning from teaching. And again, a lot of the things I've shared so far have been freelance, but if freelance does not work for you, you can still work 9 to 5. You can apply for jobs. So as a beginner, the job opportunities you have, you might not be able to get senior roles, but you can get internships or junior roles in animation organizations. But again, some of us here were like, yeah, maybe you're in the Boski, so you can apply for a senior role. I don't know. So if you can apply for that, hallelujah, praise God, thank God for you. If you get it, praise the Lord. But one more thing that I observe is that, in the Nigerian industry, the animation field is not that big. It's not that developed in the Nigerian industry. So a lot of the best opportunities will usually be international opportunities. But then the problem is that you are not competing with Nigerians. You are competing with the best in the world. So even internships and junior roles are crazy. So if you see the portfolio of someone that is applying for internship and you, a Nigerian beginner, who we don't have good NEPA lights, you are competing with somebody that has 24 hours lights in their country. So it can be quite tough to get roles in the animation industry itself. But again, not to discourage you, just be aware that it is going to be tough. So don't be surprised if it's tough, but you can still persist and you can still get it. So don't be surprised. But if you're unable to get roles in the animation industry, you don't need, I want to let you know that you don't need to work in the animation industry to earn as an animator. You can still earn by going to adjacent industries. And this is something that I don't see being talked about a lot. So you can work in other organizations like tech, advertising, other organizations that are not animation fully, and you can get a job there. Like my role right now as a creative lead, a lot of the work I do is mostly related to graphic design. But even though it's related to graphic design, I still apply 3D in my workflow at the same time. And besides, the thing that actually made me to get this role in the first place was my 3D skills, not just graphic design. What got me noticed by organization was 3D. So you can still apply for creative roles in other adjacent organizations like tech, advertising, whatever. So you can apply there because a lot of organizations, rather than outsourcing their jobs to outsiders, they are looking to try and build their in-house creative team. So that is also an opportunity. Then a final thing that, this was supposed to be part of the developing adjacent industries, but I couldn't find a place to put it, but I think it's an important way to gain an advantage in the market, which is to have a skill mix. So what it means is that as a beginner, if you compete based on animation alone, as a beginner, because let's be honest, your work is not going to be very good yet, you might struggle to stand out. You might struggle to gain markets in the field. So a good way for you to establish yourself and to gain an advantage is to take this animation skill that you have learned and combine it with something that you're already good with, that you're already good at. So when you combine animation, something you're already good at, all of a sudden you become more valuable and you kind of have more opportunities. So that is another way of you also building your financial prospects as a beginner as well. So in summary of how you can build your profitability as a beginner, you can start earning money, how to earn as a beginner. You can earn by pitching for gigs. Again, not just don't send a portfolio like other freelancers. A way of pitching is to do part of the work first do part of the work first and then send that part of the work to the client as your pitch. So your pitch is not, hey guys, look at me, I'm good. No, 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 no. You are sending the work to show them that you mean business. You don't even need to talk too much. The next thing is to offer your client zero risk offers. So something like pay on delivery to reduce the risk of working with you. So you tell them, okay, I'm going to do a part of the project first. And if you like it, you can pay for us to continue. If you don't like it, you are free to let it go. No risks to you at all. So make sure your client doesn't have any risks working with you. The next opportunity for earning is through teaching. If you have somebody in your church, someone around you, or these parents that want to teach their children something, let their children gain a tech skill. Animation is a tech skill. You can teach them. It's an opportunity for you to earn. With your little experience, your perspective is valuable. Even if you don't need to be a top dog in animation, your unique perspective is valuable. There are people that will learn from only you. So teaching is an opportunity. Another opportunity is gaining jobs, whether it's jobs in the animation industry or gaining jobs in an adjacent industry like tech or advertising or any other industry. And then finally, if you are struggling to stand out in just animation alone, combining animation with another skill that you're already good with, that you're already good at, which is a skill mix, can help you to gain profitability as a beginner. So in conclusion, if there's one thing I would just like you guys to leave this entire talk with, is the one essential thing that I think is not really discussed about. That's one essential thing that you have as a beginner that unfortunately professionals don't really have it much, is curiosity. So you must follow your curiosity as a beginner, because when you are learning not just animation, but any skill as a beginner, there is going to be a lot of uncertainty. You are going to face a lot of times where you feel stupid, where you feel silly. The only thing that will make you to persist, despite you facing problems time and time again, despite you practicing something and it's not working, is still keeping the genuine curiosity and excitement that made you to want to enter into the field in the first place. So don't lose it. Make sure you guard this all through your process, and if you guard that curiosity, you are going to make your process and your journey through the animation field will just be a lot smoother. So thank you very much for hosting me, and I hope you learned something from this. On Instagram, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn at TreasureFA, on Instagram at Treasure_Impact. I'm more active on Instagram. So if you have other things you want to talk about, you can shoot me a DM. If you learned something, you can share with me, and I hope that you've learned something today. And yeah, that's it for me, and God bless everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Please, if anyone has any questions, please, you're free to ask now. Okay, I'm going to take it that nobody has any questions then. Thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you very much, Treasure,